All right, we're back here at Abnormal Beer Company with Jason Martin, who's the head brewer here.
How you guys doing?
Hey, Jason, welcome.
Thanks.
Doing very
Glad
good.
to have you guys.
Cheers. Thank you for making us this beer, actually.
Yeah, Jason
Appreciate
made this
it.
Hazy Dreams we're drinking right now, which is fantastic.
Yeah. So one of the things that's really cool about going around to all these different breweries in San Diego is you kind of learn that there's a community here. And so I'd be interested to hear kind of what your experience has been. Most people don't just start at one brewery. They can kind of work their way around. They learn from people. They learn processes, and then eventually they kind of move up and become a head brewer somewhere. So what's your kind of background?
I think the start from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Oh, wow.
Is just like, drinking the big macros, not really understanding beer. And then all of a sudden, just like, what is this hoppy thing that I'm drinking right now? And that got me into it. And then, that was early 2000s. And then started homebrewing shortly after that. Tried to get in at Pizza Port. So I was working as a floor manager there for quite some time, but never made it to Brewside over there. Went over to Mother Earth Brewing and started from the bottom over there.
Yeah.
Within about 2.5 years, I was the evening brewing supervisor. And from there, went over to Fall Brewing.
Yeah.
And was hired there as one of the brewers and did about 3 years there. We put out some great beers, got to meet a lot of people. A lot of brewers end up going there on the regular. So I got to meet a lot of the different crew in San Diego. Then came here after that.
Nice. Yeah, so for those out here that don't know, it's a very collaborative sort of craft. Yeah. So when you talk about Fall does a lot of collaboration. So a lot of brewers will come in and collaborate with you guys, and you learned a lot. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's your, just out of curiosity, so what do you think the appeal is, in San Diego specifically too, with IPAs? Because IPAs, I don't know, 10 years ago were kind of a fringe sort of, like you were talking about, like Sierra Nevada, Anchor Steam in the old days too was,
right.
You're right.
Yeah.
But it's exploded to the point where sometimes when you go in and look at a beer list, there's 20 beers, there's 10 IPAs on there. So what do you attribute that to?
The consumer.
Yeah.
People just love IPAs. I mean, there's so many different variants. I mean, there's over 100 different hop varieties, and there's just so many different ways to build them. And it's like, you want a black IPA, a white IPA, a hazy. There's all these different styles, and you can just make something to appeal to everybody. And with the craze going on with it,
yeah,
you got to have several different ones on.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I guess what you're saying is that there's a lot of complexities to IPAs. There's a lot of different ways to build one, you just said.
Absolutely.
So with all these different ways to do that, there brings in a form of creativity. Like, you're the creative genius behind these brews and these beers and how they're crafted. So how much creativity do you really put into this stuff?
Man, there's even right now it's about taking different IPAs and maybe merging those different styles together. Like what I'm drinking right now is kind of a blend between a West Coast IPA and a hazy IPA. We took all the things that we liked about West Coast, all the things that we like about hazy, and we made this thing. So it's not quite...
What
hazy.
Is that thing?
This is called Fresh Beats. We're calling it a juicy IPA.
Nice. So
it has a little bit of clarity to it, but it has, really strong, fruity, juicy notes to it.
Yeah. So talk about, we're going to get to the chemistry of this in a minute, but talk about Hazies. So I remember...
Yeah, right?
We're
like, what is a hazy?
About 10 years ago, the first hazy, it was unfiltered, was Alpine Nelson, which I had about 10 years ago. And it was, cloudy, and it was an unfiltered beer. But now I'm learning that especially some of the bigger breweries, they're doing a hazy, which has become the term, but they'll put lactose in it, I believe, to give it that cloudiness. So
I would say that's more of the milkshake style IPAs where they are going for a really thick body, having a lot of residual sweetness, and then they'll take different hops that have more berry or fruit notes as opposed to, your dank, resinous pine and stuff like that.
Yeah. So what is a hop? Tell people out there, what is it like if you were out in nature? What does it look like?
Yeah.
What is it?
It looks like a green pine cone. They're probably a little bit bigger than a quarter, up to maybe the size of I don't know, a large jawbreaker. They're not really that big, and you need hundreds of pounds of them in order to be making these beers.
Where do these hops come from?
Typically around here, Yakima Valley in Washington.
Okay.
They need to be grown higher north on the latitude line. Some come from Germany, but most of us are using American hops.
Okay.
Unless we're getting them from New Zealand for those, like you mentioned earlier, Nelson. Nelson is exclusive hop to New Zealand.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, very cool.
And then so take, if you can, pretend like you're talking to a fifth grader, right? Describe for dummies, because we're dummies, probably most of you guys out there too, like, how do you make beer? Like, take us through the steps of beer making.
Well, I mean, first thing is once you get your recipe, it's mainly all about the grain. And, we have different base malts, different specialty malts. We figure out what flavor profiles we want, and we mix it into our lauter tun, which is basically a big vessel with a screen on the bottom of it.
Okay.
So you put your grain and water in there, and you wait for the conversion to happen, and that's basically taking those carbohydrates from the grain and turning it into a sugar that could be eaten by yeast. So after you've drained all the liquid out of that grain, you have something that tastes like cereal water. It's kind of interesting. Throw that in your brew kettle, boil it up, add your hops in there to give it some bitterness, give it some depth to your hop flavor. You're going to cool that down, throw it in your fermenter, put your yeast in there, and again, there's 100 different types of yeast.
Right.
So depending on what your yeast you're going for is going to really impact the flavor of your beer. And then, all that yeast will eat all that sugar, give you alcohol. Once that's all done, throw in your dry hops, then package it off and drink.
So you've got yeast, you have hops, you have, what was the other element we were talking about?
Yeast.
Grain.
Hops, grains,
Grain.
Type of grain you're
And
using,
water.
right? And water. Okay.
Water is real important.
Water is
and
important.
science.
So on an offshoot of that, so again, going back to Alpine Brewing Company, back in the old days, like 10 years ago, he knows Chris. My friend and I would go out and we'd get jugs from Steve out there of Nelson. We love Nelson.
Yeah.
And they had their own well actually on that facility. And when they went to Green Flash and started mass producing the stuff and made that contract with them, the Nelson did not taste the same.
Absolutely.
Did not. And I'm assuming it had to do with the water.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So water's a big deal.
All the ingredients are really that delicate, where if you change one water source, you'll have two different beers.
Water is probably the most important thing in the brewing process.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
The chemistry of that. I mean, that's why certain German beers are so much better than what we can replicate out here. The original Pilsner is known from the Carlsbad water out there. It's just a really soft water, and it makes their Pilsner beer like anything else.
Huh.
It's very hard to recreate.
Yeah. So
That's interesting. I'm intrigued that water is the most important ingredient. I would always think it would be hops would be the best one.
Hops are important, but I mean, if you don't have good water starting out, it's just a recipe for failure.
That's the base.
Yes.
So as somebody who clearly you have a lot of passion and it's a craft for you. So what, in San Diego, what are some of the other breweries where you're like, yeah, they're doing good beer? Like, what do you like? Besides
San
Abnormal,
Diego.
obviously.
Virgin is probably one of my favorites. I live up near those guys, so I get their beer quite often. Rip Current does a pretty good job on a few of their beers. I've been drinking their Czech lager a lot lately. They've been killing it with that. And there's a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Pure Project.
Yep.
Big fan of those guys.
Sure.
I'm really a lager drinker most of the time.
Oh, you are?
If you have a good light lager or a good Pilsner,
Yeah, you're
I'm
in.
there.
That's where you're at. Yeah, nice.
I know we're kind of opposite. I like the heavier stuff, but
Don't get me wrong. I love a good hoppy beer, but it's I'll drink one of those.
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah, yeah. If you're sitting down for like
Yeah.
4 or 5 hours hanging out with friends, like you can't drink 6 or 7 of these. You're gonna be on the floor.
I get off work and go home with my kids. I can't drink an Imperial IPA. I got to have my wits about me. Those kids are smart.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, they're getting smarter the older they get.
So we found, I know in California, and I'm not just saying this kiss your guy's ass because it's absolutely true, is My favorite beers in California are Almanac,
Oh yeah.
Moonraker, and Abnormal. No joke.
Right on.
I think Abnormal, like just across the board, the stuff you guys do here in San Diego, it's craft to the point where you can really taste the art.
Yeah.
And it's big enough where you find it, which is nice, because a lot of those things, like down here, try to find Moonraker, good luck, because it's gone like that. Like Bottle Shop will have it, boom, gone. But I think that those 3 breweries for me in California are my favorites.
Right on.
You guys are really taking that next step in the scene for us.
I think so.
It's like, obviously we came from where we came from with Ballast Point, and they did their thing, but you guys are propelling that next step. Like, you're the forefront of this, right?
Yeah.
Right
So
on.
what do you got? What do you got coming down the line? What are you working on?
Right
Come
now,
on.
I got
Tell us.
going back to the basics. We just put out a light lager that I'm really stoked on. 4% American light lager, really easy to drink. We got a German Pils coming out. Let's see. We got a new IPA coming out, another version of this, a little bit more resinous though.
Nice.
Not so fruit forward, a little bit more of the
Piney.
Yeah, piney and resin
right on.
kind of character. Working on a few other recipes as we speak, but I think we're going to be bringing back one of our favorites, Turbidity. Is a double dry, or not double dry hop, a double hazy.
I had that.
And
Yeah,
we
baby.
rotate the hops on that. So
Dude, I love
we'll-
that.
we'll
I
see
can't
where we
find it
go.
anymore,
Yeah.
so that's why, because it's gone.
It's a seasonal, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, we're going to be putting that out soon.
So how does it work? Like when you're in a brewing facility like this, is it like a mad scientist lab where you're like, oh, I'm going to try this, and then you try it? Like, how does that progression? It's almost like a prototype for like a car, for example, right?
Yeah, that's
Where
a
you-
good question. How many of these
Yeah.
fail?
Yeah.
I've been pretty fortunate not to have many failures. Got a lot of, well, back when I was in fall, we were putting out 2 to 4 new beers every month.
Oh, wow.
And every single one of them seemed to be a success. So I have a good lineage behind me. I didn't write all those recipes. I got to write a few of them. I'm pretty stoked about that.
Yeah.
And what I usually try and do is I take what do I want? What are the flavors I want? And then I try and work backwards from that, creating a recipe.
Yeah.
And we've had pretty good success with it.
Are there any?
So-
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go.
So no, I'm just trying to get to the core of you. So, when you approach the beer, like you just explained, you're more in the science part of this, where it's kind of like this is the end product.
The chemistry.
The
Yeah, I know what
chemistry,
you're
the
saying,
science part of it. I need to get it perfect to get to that, or is this more like the journey of creativity that you're on?
Probably more the journey of creativity, not so much the science. Water profile is there. I've got brewing calculators that help me out with that. But yeah, it's more just like, this is what I've done in the past. This is what's worked, and we're gonna kind of use that knowledge to go from there.
Nice.
Is there any ingredient that you're dying to put in a beer?
Strata. Yeah, we're going to be ordering some Strata hops. It's one of my favorite new hops that's come out. And as far as I know, Abnormal has not used it yet. So
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, I actually was just writing a recipe
Nice.
before I came in with you guys for that. So
And are they also from Washington, or?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
So what makes it a new hop?
Well, they haven't used it yet.
crossbreeding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I might be mistaken, but I believe it's a cross between Citra and Mosaic.
Nice.
And those are two
I like
of the
that.
most popular hops out right now.
Yeah,
and
they are.
Strata is just starting to come in.
Yeah.
We got to do a few beers with that in the past, and they all turned out great.
That's awesome. So they have ratings on these things. We'll wrap up in a minute because I know she's going to wrap us. But they have ratings, IBUs. Okay. So when you get back to hops, so are the hops the main thing that determines the IBUs on those?
Yes.
I would imagine, right?
Yeah, it's all about the resin content and the alpha acids associated with it. That's what it breaks down in your boil and adds to the bitterness.
Got it. And what's the highest IBU you guys have here?
I'm not really sure. Probably executive pour. It's probably in the 70s or 80s.
That's a big one.
Wow.
That's a big one. Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
Most of the stuff I like is like in the 50s and 60s. You know,
Right.
in
That's
that
gonna be your
ballpark.
most West Coast
Yeah.
beers.
It's in the ballpark, yeah, for sure.
But executive pour is basically, we call it a double IPA, but it's just shy of 10%. I mean, it's hoppy barley wine.
It's almost a triple.
It's delicious. It's dangerous. Goes down easy. Doesn't go down like a 10% beer.
Right.
Yeah, that's the danger and beauty of these things.
So we were talking to Matt about like what the business is doing moving forward, and breweries are interesting because there's, and you know this, there's small breweries in San Diego. They're very boutique-y, small batches. All the money comes in the front door, and they're almost selling nothing out the back door. And then there's the bigger ones that sell 80% of their business out the back door and very little out the front door. And so we're kind of asking them about like what the projection is, like what they're trying to do here. And it sounds like you guys are trying to scale to some extent, right? Mm-hmm. So what, like, I'd love to go to other parts of the country. I saw your guys' stuff in Trader Joe's the other day, which I was like, wow, that's awesome. But it'd be cool to like, how far out are you guys right now? When, like, if you go to Nevada, is it there? You go to, you know what I'm saying?
We have a small presence in Nevada.
Yeah.
We have a small presence in Arizona.
Yeah.
And I believe we're just really San Diego, Orange County, and Riverside.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we can only produce so much beer. It just,
Right.
you know, every time our distributor asks for something, it's like,
Right.
oh, you want that much? Well, we have this much to give you just because we can't keep
Right.
up.
So is it,
Yeah.
and there has to be a quality control thing. We talked about Alpine before. So they ran into that issue, which was, you know, Steve's like, yeah, I'll sell you this much, and you can produce, you know, you can produce Nelson, you can produce some of our other stuff, and under your, but you know, once you change the water, once you go to a
The
bigger
most important
scale,
ingredient.
yeah, once you go to a bigger scale, things can change. So that's something probably, I'm guessing that the business and the craft side probably conflict over sometimes, right? Which is like quality control versus scale.
To a degree, they let us have pretty good control here to make sure that we're sending out the best possible product. You know, if we need to tell the distributor to wait, that's what we're going to have to do to make
Yeah.
sure that that product is on point for when the consumer has it.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And to be fair, I mean, like I just said, I was looking for that. What was the one beer you told me? The Double Hazy? It was called.
Oh, turbidity.
Yeah. Like I was at Jensen's down the street from me. I live in Point Loma, and it was there for like last summer. And I was buying those 4-packs, and all of a sudden it was gone. I was like, where'd it go? No!
But we just found out it's seasonal, so it's coming back.
It's coming back, exactly. But look, I'm desiring it. That's kind of good. You
Right
pull
on.
it back a little bit, like,
That's
you know.
that's called the takeaway in sales, right there.
Yes, it is called the takeaway.
Make the people want more.
Yeah. So we really appreciate you taking the time to sit down. I know that Jason's got to go pick up his kids, get his family together, get out of here. We appreciate you coming and sitting down with us and sharing all this information. I'm sure that
Absolutely.
everybody out there their minds are blown because they have no idea how to make beer, and hopefully you made it a little simpler for them. Any home brewers at home, be inspired.
Yes.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Absolutely.
It was
for
great
coming out,
having
guys.
you. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
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 Thank you.